This nugget, using Microsoft Project to manage a project schedule, is focused on understanding how to use Microsoft Project to track actuals, how to use Microsoft Project to resolve project overruns, how to use Microsoft Project to manage the overall details of the project plan on a week-in, week-out basis as you're delivering your project. So how do we do that? Let's get Microsoft Project started and let's get to work. Here we have a Microsoft Project plan that I've already created and already has begun to have task tracking done. You can see here in the Gantt view we have 3 tasks where there is a black bar going through the middle of our Gantt area. And the black bar is indicative of time tracked. So we see this task is complete, the black bar is all the way through. Task number 2 is in process, the taskbar does not complete to the end of the task, and task 3 is also complete. Before we can truly begin to track time in Microsoft Project, we need to go in and do some modifications. We need to add some extra information to our Gantt view, very similar to having to add the work column when we were defining the project plan initially. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the duration column, because as a project manager, during delivery, I'm not as focused on duration, although it's important, it controls my project schedule. The real focus is on work and remaining work. So I'm going to go ahead and do a right mouse click and remove the duration column or hide the duration column. Now I need to add the extra columns to ensure that I have the information I need to manage my project. So again, I will go to the title area, I will do a right mouse click, and I'm going to insert column. There are 3 columns I need to add. The first column is baseline work. So I go and I find baseline work, and I select that, and I enter the column. If you can remember back to when we were completing our original plan in Microsoft Project, the last thing we did after the plan was complete is we saved the baseline. At that time I mentioned the baseline was a series of read-only data spaces that preserved the original plan information. Now we're seeing some of that baseline information brought into play. We're showing the baseline work. This is our original plan information, where the work field is the actual details that we're delivering the project to. And you can see there's variations. Task number 1, the original work was 24 hours in baseline, but we see this task actually took an extra hour to complete and finished at 25. Task 3, on the other hand, original work was 40 hours, and we got lucky, or the project delivered well, and we're seeing it was completed in only 30 hours. And task 2, still in process, was originally forecast to be 32 hours and is now forecast at 38. But let's get a little more information to allow us to truly manage our project. There's 2 more columns we need to add. So again, we'll insert column, and we will add a column called actual work. And we'll squeeze that over a little bit, and we'll add 1 more column, and we'll add remaining work. And we'll squeeze this back because we don't really need start date. So now we have the information that we need to truly allow us to effectively manage our project. Baseline work, original plan. Work, the total current information you have on the total amount of work that is going to be required to deliver the project. Actual work is work done on the project to date. So we've actually done 25 hours of work on this task, and we see remaining work is 0, so the task is complete. Task number 2, we've actually done 18 hours of work, and the remaining is 20. And that's how we're seeing the actual current forecast for the task is 38, as opposed to the baseline of 32. An actual of 18 plus a remaining of 20 gives us the 6-hour variance. And then finally, task number 3, actual work is 30 hours, remaining is 0, so this is where we actually were able to complete the task ahead of schedule. Entering this information into Microsoft Project is as simple as going to the appropriate line, task number 2, and entering the detailed information into the task. So in this case, we want to make our actual work for task number 2 a total of 42 hours for the task. So we put 42 in there and move out of the task. We see it has done a number of things. The 42 obviously is entered here. It subtracted the work and turned our remaining work to 0. So it is saying, unless you tell me otherwise, this task is complete. And it has updated the actual work to be reflective of the addition of the 42 plus the 0. If there was remaining work, we would go in there and say there are 2 hours remaining. And again, it will do the math. The actual work plus the remaining work will give us the total work for the task, and the baseline is left unchanged. While we're making these changes, you'll see that Microsoft Project is also maintaining these subtotal and total lines. So we're seeing that remaining work is 206 hours, and this first activity has remaining work of 2 hours. We're going to go back and set that back to 0. So we set that back to 0 and click out. We'll notice that Microsoft Project is maintaining these summary fields for us as well. This is the area that we discussed when we were setting up the project with Calculate Automatic or Calculate Manual. As you will see by the evidence of what Microsoft Project is doing for me, I have this set as Calculate Automatic. Only if you were having performance problems, if you found your application was running slowly, would you need to go in and set that to Calculate manually. You will notice, however, that none of the information in the baseline column is changing. That's because this is preserved. This is the original plan information and is used for comparative purposes, allowing you to recognize that for this activity, which is now complete, 0 hours remaining, I had originally planned that it would be done in 96 hours, and it has actually been done in 97 hours. So we're actually in pretty good shape. Adding the actual information, the task details, into Microsoft Project in this Gantt view is an acceptable format for doing it. Often you will find that this doesn't give you the degree of control or the degree of granularity that you need to enter this information. All you're doing is simply entering a single number per task. Doesn't give you the granularity to split that effort across multiple resources, doesn't give you the granularity to manage that effort on a week-by-week basis. Microsoft Project provides 2 alternate views that you can use to track and manage task details. One is the task usage detail view, and one is the resource usage detail view. It doesn't matter whether you're entering the actuals in the Gantt view, as we just did, in the task usage view, or in the resource usage view. You are entering the same information into Microsoft Project, and it will have the same net result on your project schedule. How you do it is a matter of personal preference. How you do it is a matter of how much control you need over the task tracking functionality. Personally, I prefer to use the resource usage view, so we'll go to that, and we'll see why. In the resource usage view, the project schedule is sorted by resource. So here we're seeing here are all of the tasks that are assigned to each resource. Resource 1 is working on tasks 1, 6, and 8. Resource 2 is working on 2, 3, 5, and 9. And resource 3 is working on those tasks. So now when you get a timesheet from resource number 1, you have all of the details related to resource number 1 at your availability to allow you to do detailed time tracking for resource 1, followed by resource 2, followed by resource 3. The task usage view provides the same information, except it's sorted differently. In task usage, obviously it's sorted by task with resources under the task, where this one is sorted by resources with the tasks under the resources. As we found with the Gantt view, we don't have the detailed information on this initial view as provided by Microsoft to truly provide the granularity, the control that we need. So again, we need to do a little work with the data that's displayed on our view. We'll start by hiding the start and finish columns. We'll hide the start, we'll hide the finish, and we will start to add the additional columns that we need to give us effective task tracking. So we're going to do insert, and we're going to insert the actual work, and we're going to insert the remaining work. Whoops, that's not the one I want. remaining work. We could insert baseline work as well, but if all we're doing in this view is tracking the actuals and we're doing an actual management back in the Gantt view, adding the baseline doesn't provide a lot of value, but it's available. Again, you can add and remove columns from your display based on your individual work preferences, based on your individual information requirements, based on what you're doing at that moment as a project manager. So we're almost ready to begin to use this task or resource usage view. We now have the actual work and the remaining work and the detailed work information for the task. The one final thing we need to do is we need to go over here into this spreadsheet area and add the same information. So if we go over here and do a right mouse anywhere in the grid area, you can see we can add additional information to this grid. It's defaulted to show us work. We're also going to want to add the actual work information into this view. So if we do that, we're now ready to start tracking information into this resource usage view. So now we're ready to begin tracking our actuals for our project. We received our timesheets for the week from our 3 resources. Timesheet from resource number 1 said they worked on task number 6 this week. The team member tells us that they only spent 8 hours on our project this week, and that it was all spent on task number 6. So we go to actual work, and we enter the 8. Now before I hit enter and accept that value, I want to focus your attention on the remaining work column. At this moment, the remaining work is set at 32 hours. That was our original estimate for the task. That's what we believe the task was going to be done with. We hit enter, and Microsoft Project, being the eternal optimist, has said, well, if you spent 8 hours on the task, and the original work estimate was 32, therefore remaining must be 24. In this particular instance, unfortunately, that's not the case. The team member has told us this is going to be a much more difficult task than originally planned, and it's actually going to be a remaining, not a total, but a remaining effort of 50 hours for them to complete the task. So we accept the information from our team member. We do challenge them. We say, are you sure? We have to manage the performance of our team members appropriately, but if they convince us that yes, this task is more complex, and yes, it's truly going to take 50 hours to complete the task, we accept that information and we enter 50 in the remaining for our task. We hit enter now, we see that it's going to update the work column and say that there's now 58 hours remaining to complete on that particular task, or 50 hours of total effort with 50 hours remaining and a total of 8 hours on the task. So that's it for our timesheet for resource number 1. We get our timesheet from resource number 2, and they tell us they were working on task number 5 this week. They did a little better. They got 16 hours work done on the task. So we take 16 hours work with a total effort of 24. We hit enter. It's going to give us a remaining of 8. They're going to say, well, that's not quite the case. We believe we have a total of 15 hours remaining to get the task done. Again, we're going to effectively manage the resources, and we're going to say, are you sure? Okay, I believe you. It's going to take 15 hours remaining to complete the task. We hit enter, so our total effort for the task has been incremented to 31 hours. That's it for resource number 2. We go on to resource number 3, and resource number 3 tells us that they spent all of their time this week on task number 4. When we look at our timesheet from resource number 3, we see they provided more details, more granularity than our other 2 resources. The other 2 resources simply provided a total effort per week per task. Resource number 3 has actually provided us detailed information of what work they've done on a project on a day-by-day basis. So looking at resource number 3's timesheet, they tell us for task number 4, on Wednesday, they spent 2 hours working on the task. So before I hit enter, we'll note that at this moment in time, the actual work is showing as 0. If I hit enter, it's gone through and taken that 2 hours from Wednesday and updated the actual work column. If I go on, they spent another 2 hours on Thursday. I hit enter. It's gone through. You'll notice in the time information, in this grid information, it's taken the actual work and it's updated the work field on a day-by-day basis. It has also updated the work information over here in the summary view. So this is where we get the degree of granularity, the degree of extra control that we need to allow us to effectively manage the time per resource, per task, on a day-by-day basis to truly give us true actuals, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts that we need to manage our project. Again, Microsoft Project has been the eternal optimist. It's taken the actuals from our team member, subtracted it from the current forecast for the task, and said the remaining work is 16 hours. Unfortunately, this doesn't seem to be a very good week for our project. Another team member is telling us they're going to go over on their task, and it's actually going to take them 16 hours remaining to get the job done. So if we accept that information, we now see the effort for the task has been incremented to 20 hours. At this point in time, we're done entering the timesheet information from our team members. It's time to go back to our Gantt view and understand what implications many of these overruns are going to have on our overall project schedule. So now that we've added all of the actuals to our Microsoft project plan, it's time to assess the damage. And in this case, I think there's going to be damage because we had significant overruns. We had significant added estimate to complete on the tasks that we tracked. So it's time to understand what impact those actuals are going to have on our Microsoft project plan. In order to do that, we need to change the information we're showing in our Gantt view. So let's remove these columns. So we'll hide the baseline work, we'll hide the work, we'll hide the actual work, and we'll hide the remaining work. That kind of detailed information we're now tracking and managing in the task usage and the resource usage fields. So we're going to add different information to this view to allow us to better understand how well the project is delivering. So let's add in some more baseline information. Let's add baseline start. And let's add baseline, we'll adjust the size of that a little bit. Let's add baseline finish. And now we can see how our project is doing versus our original plan. So originally, we thought our project was going to complete on April the 25th, and now it's telling us the project is not going to complete until May the 2nd. So we're running a week and a half or so late. So we need to now begin to take actions as a project manager to assess what we can do to bring our project back onto schedule. So now it's time to begin to look at our project plan to see what we can do to improve our current finish date, to try to get the finish date back more in line with our original finish date that we developed for our project. Before I start that, I'm going to remove these two columns simply to give me a little more real estate on my screen so that I can see more of my Gantt chart at the same time. So I'm simply going to go in and hide my baseline start and hide my start fields. And the purpose of that purely was to give myself a little more real estate so I can see my Gantt view. So I'm looking at my project plan and I'm saying, what can I do? Look at task number 6. It's a very long task. There's a lot of work to be done on it. I wonder if I added another resource to the project plan, what impact that's going to have on the project. So then I will go to my resource usage, and I will say, who has some available time? What can I do with my resources to try to improve my project delivery situation? Well, looking at this, I can see resource number 1 is very busy. Resource number 2 may have some availability. Resource number 3 may have some availability. So let's see what I can do and assign different resources to that particular task to try to bring it in a little bit faster. So now that I know I have some availability with resource 2 and resource 3, I'll go back to my Gantt chart. I'll look at task number 6, and I will say, what happens if I try adding another resource to task number 6? Resource assignment during delivery is the same as resource assignment during initial setup. We will go to this button, Assign Resources. We'll see the original assignment of resource number 1, and let's add a second resource to the task as well, and we'll assign resource number 2 to that as well. We can see instant result. The task has been shortened because we now have 2 resources working on the task. And we look at our end date, it's gotten a little bit better. We're still not back to our original proposed finish date, but it's not as bad. So adding that extra resource to that task shorten that task, and allow it to bring the task more in line. So we need to take more actions as a project manager to try to improve our project delivery situation. We look at task number 7. Well, there's not much we can do to that. That's already pretty aggressive. And we begin to look forward in our project saying, what else can we do to improve our project delivery situation? And we look at tasks 8, 9, and 10. They're all relatively short tasks, so adding additional resources probably doesn't make a lot of work. But we begin to look at our resource dependent or our task dependency, saying, is task 9 and task 10 truly dependent upon task number 8? We originally set it up with that dependency in mind, but as we begin to think about it and say, yes, we would be adding some risk to our project if we remove those dependencies, but there really is no reason that with proper communications between our resources 2 and 3 back to resource number 1, that these tasks couldn't begin to happen in parallel. So we go to task number 9 and we remove the dependency. So now it is happening concurrent with task number 8, and we'll do the same with task number 10, and we'll remove the dependency. So now if we have a look at our overall project schedule, we're seeing that not only have we met our original baseline finish date of the 25th, we've actually bettered it a little bit, that we're now finishing the project a little early. We have added additional risk to our project by removing those dependencies, but it's a risk based on the information we now have at hand on our project delivery scenario that we believe is a manageable, acceptable risk. So we have taken the appropriate actions in Microsoft Project, adjusted the schedule, adjusted our plan to allow us to proactively deliver our project on time. This concludes our nugget on using Microsoft Project to track and manage projects. The key is you need to enter the actual details from the timesheets from your team members into Microsoft Project. You need to accept the facts from the team members, the work actually completed on the project on a week-by-week basis, and the team members' revised estimates to complete, the actual work they believe it's going to take to complete the project tasks. You enter that information into Microsoft Project, and you assess the impact. Damage control is what I often refer to it as. The impact those actuals are going to have on the project finish date, and then you begin to take actions as a project manager. Can we do things? Can we change the resource loading? Can we change the dependencies? What can we do to become a little more aggressive without introducing too much risk into the project to allow us to improve the project delivery timeline, to allow us to deliver the project on time? The key is, once you enter the actuals, you need to review and manage and reiterate the plan to try to come up with a better news scenario before you present the information to your project sponsor. You need to manage the data, you need to manage the plan, you need to be as aggressive as possible without introducing too much risk to your project before you go to the project sponsor and say, bad news, the project is delayed. As you saw with a little bit of aggression in Microsoft Project, on this relatively short project, we were able to change our finish date from approximately a week and a half late to now where it is approximately a week early. Yes, by doing these tasks in parallel as opposed to serially, we may have introduced some risk. We may have introduced extra communications channels, but that is a consideration we are willing to manage as the project manager to try to deliver this project on time. This concludes our nugget on using Microsoft Project to manage a project schedule. I hope this video has been informative for you, and thank you very much for viewing.